Going back to see the Phillies back in my hometown. Back to Philadelphia for
Hello,
the
everyone, and
sun
welcome
goes
to another
down.
edition of
Wanna
Nation's
get
Pastime
back
in the nation's
there
capital.
to the ballpark
I'm your host, Andrew
lights.
Snape. Here
I
with
gotta
host
see
Robbie
the
Cruz.
Phillies, what a beautiful
And baseball
sight.
season is
Gotta
finally
go
upon
cheer
us.
'em on,
We are
help
in the
score
season, and
some
we are
runs.
starting off hot
We
here
wanna
in
make the
2019.
Phillies
Yes, sir. It's another
number
baseball
one.
season.
I
It's
want you to
been pretty
tell
exciting so far. A lot of surprises early on, but hey, it's another year.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This is Nation's Pastime in the nation's capital. As said, we are live every Tuesday night from WCUA Radio, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. And if you want to call in and discuss anything we're talking about or anything else baseball-related, you can go ahead and call us at 202-319-5106. So on the agenda for tonight's show, we figured we would finish up some of the contract extension talk that we were getting into 2 weeks ago with the plethora of contract extensions handed out over the offseason. And after that, we would go ahead and start a series where we examine all of the divisions in baseball, going by East, Central, and West in both leagues, and telling how we think their season's gotten underway, some of their impact players, who they've been so far, and their outlook for the season.
Yes, sir. And as I said earlier, there's been a lot of surprises, but some of these contract extensions have been pretty good so far, so we'll have to see how it goes.
Absolutely. Some of them seem to be very good so far. Also, some of them not looking as good, but that's the glory of baseball. And it's also good to remember that we are only 2 weeks into the season, so we'll have to see how they play out throughout the year. So getting started with that, we left off 2 weeks ago after Jose Leclerc's 4-year, $14.75 million extension with the Texas Rangers, which means we are now on to Kansas City Royals second baseman Whit Merrifield, who signed a 4-year, $16.25 million extension. And I got to say, Robbie, this is one of the most team-friendly deals for an absolutely stellar player in baseball.
Oh, yeah, no question. Whit Merrifield most likely signed this contract extension because this will cover his arbitration years from now until he's an impending free agent. And he doesn't have to worry about getting paid the league minimum. That's why so many of these players have signed these contract extensions. But Merrifield is a guy who is just a great hitter. He's not bad defensively either. He finished 17th in the MVP voting last year. He's a career .295 hitter. He hit .304 last year, and he's been absolutely insane this year, hitting .342. And many executives around the league and sources around the league believe that he is the future of the Kansas City Royals, a team that is just not – they don't appear to be headed in the right direction. They don't have much of a future, it appears, but Whit Merrifield is the guy that they appear to be building around.
Absolutely, and something to note of with Whit Merrifield, of course, is that speed. The man's stolen 34 bases in 2017, 45 last year, and again, going with the batting average and very high contact rate, it just makes him a very valuable player on that Kansas City Royals club, and a Kansas City Royals club that is actually very speedy this year.
Yeah.
Also, with the additions of Billy Hamilton helping out there, Chris Owings, also another very fast guy. I think they were projected to be one of the fastest teams in baseball, if I'm not mistaken.
Most likely the fastest, actually. I mean, I can't think of a team that's any faster than the Kansas City Royals right now.
No, and it's really interesting because it seems like speed is something that, if you'll see here and there a few players have, but not something that a lot of teams build around just because the mantra for this age is, of course, power hitters, get the home runs, you know what I mean? People who get on base. And a lot of the times the guys who are speedy and have that gift of speed are not exactly great at either power hitting or getting on base. I mean, look at Billy Hamilton as an example. Without a doubt, probably the fastest player in Major League Baseball. The guy can't hit. He can't hit at all.
No, and that's why the Cincinnati Reds had to release him this past offseason. The guy just can't hit. He's a great athlete, great defensively. He can really run, and he's just a great athlete, but he simply can't hit. In order to remain a solid Major League starter, you have to hit better than .220, Billy. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely. Another great aspect of the Kansas City Royals team being, of course, the recent decision to... Oh, no, actually, I'm thinking of a different team. Actually, I would actually agree with that. I was thinking of the Indians again, ironically. We seem to touch on the Indians a lot here. But no, Royals, I would actually have to agree with you on the previous statement. Doesn't seem like they're heading in that much of a correct direction there. But, hey, at least it'll be fun to watch that team, I think, if you're a Kansas City Royals fan because of that speed. And, it's the Royals. There's not too much else going on in that Central Division overall. So who knows? Maybe they'll surprise everyone and come in third place. You never know.
This still is one of the youngest teams in professional baseball, so that is something to build around for the future. I think the main problem for the Kansas City Royals is simply their pitching. I mean, come on, Danny Duffy's always injured, it appears. Ian Kennedy, that contract didn't appear to work out. So this team simply needs pitching, and that bullpen just isn't good enough. I think that the lineup has potential. Obviously, the injury to Salvador Perez is going to hurt them. The Alex Scoring contract probably wasn't the best, but, he's still a solid defender. Anyways, their pitching is what's been killing them, and that's something that they need to focus on going into the future.
Yeah, I think looking back at the Kansas City Royals over the past couple years, one of their biggest pluses has been the decision not to re-sign Eric Hosmer, and I think that was a great decision on their part because, let's just say, he's been a little less than stellar in San Diego.
Just a little bit less?
Yeah, just a little bit less. Went from a guy who a lot of people considered a star first baseman to someone who I don't think went drafted in our fantasy league this year.
No, actually, he did not. I mean, last year he had 253. This year he's only hitting 244. He's a guy who is still great defensively, and that's what's helping his presence on the Padres. But he's like Billy Hamilton. He's not doing a great job of hitting the ball. And he's one of those many guys that has a good season before his free agent year. Before he became free agent, he had 318 and hit 25 home runs. So then what do the Padres do? They just go out and throw 8 years and $144 million at him. It's one of those examples where if you have a good year before your free agent season, you're about to get paid.
Oh, we see that a lot, and I think we're seeing it right now with a lot of people who are about to be free agents, namely Anthony Rendon, who's off to a scorching start for the Washington Nationals. We'll get into that a little bit later, though, as we talk about impact players for the AL and NL East divisions later on. Moving on to the next player, the next two players actually, both a couple of young pitchers who were locked up by their clubs and two what I would consider outstanding decisions. Firstly, Aaron Nola, the 4-year, $45 million extension with the Philadelphia Phillies. And I think it's safe to say that this is an excellent decision for both Aaron Nola and the Phillies. I think a little better for the Phillies because I think Aaron Nola could easily get some more money if he continues to pitch like he did last year in the future. But I think the Phillies are the overall winners of this. They locked up their young ace until he's 32 years old. And in his interview, he said he wants to stay in Philly. He could have gotten more in the market, but he didn't care because he wants to win in Philly and he wants to play in Philly. So I respect that.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, especially based off of what he did last year. I mean, going 17-6 with a 2.37 ERA, just sensational.
And may I remind you, with a absolutely abysmal Phillies defense behind him.
Yeah, and what was his WAR, like over 10?
It was. He was actually, according to, I believe, ESPN, he was either first or he was right behind Mookie Betts in the highest wins above replacement in baseball last year. Just because wins above replacement takes into account defense so heavily, he was something like a 10-win player.
And this is a guy that goes out and throws every 5 days.
Starting pitcher, not even a position player. You got Mookie Betts, who was out there playing 150-plus games, and he was just as valuable as Aaron Nola, just because that's how good Nola was. I mean, I don't think anyone is going to sit here and say that the 2018 Phillies were a good team, because they really weren't. But the fact was, Aaron Nola was the sole reason they were in the playoffs for as long as they were. I mean, looking at wins above replacement as, a determination of how many wins that player contributes when he's on the field, that's 10 wins alone just from him. That means the Phillies are 13 games below 500 without Aaron Nola last year. I think that's
just
absolutely insane.
I mean, granted, the thing is, Aaron Nola hasn't looked as good through his first 2 starts this season. He's coming in with the 7.00 ERA. Not the
Of course, that is inflated, though.
I'm sorry?
It is inflated from his bad
yeah,
start
right.
in Washington.
So, I mean, his first start wasn't as good, but, Nola's a guy that he appears to be really good. Came up as a top prospect, and he was one of those guys I slowly started to write him off, and then last year he proved why he was so valuable and why the Phillies were refusing to trade him when he was a prospect.
Yeah, when he came up, he was a pretty high prospect, but he, after pitching in the majors in 15 and 16, was never really seen as more than a guy who could be like a 3 or possibly a 2 guy in a rotation. And the Phillies were so high on him, they said, no, we believe this guy can be a legitimate ace, and they kept at it, and he really was in 2018 a legitimate ace. As we said, 17-6 with a 2.37 ERA, finished 3rd in the Cy Young voting, behind, of course, only Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom.
Developing that new slider really helped him.
Absolutely. Slider helped him a lot. And I think command on his circle change as well. His circle change became his go-to pitch last year. It really fooled a lot of batters. Like you said, he got off to a little bit of a slow start to start the 2018 season, a rough start in Washington last week against the Nationals. But he'll go at it again tonight as he's actually opposing Steven Strasburg in what should be an excellent pitcher's duel at Citizens Bank Park tonight.
Yes, it's an exciting game. Anytime you get to see Steven Strasburg and Aaron Nola pitch, it's truly a treat for one.
Absolutely. We'll have to see how that goes tonight. And then, of course, the second pitcher I was referring to, New York Yankees starting pitcher Luis Severino getting a 4-year, $40 million deal. And I would agree again that I think the Yankees won this deal. Now, it's the same as Nolan the Phillies. You get your young ace, you get him locked up for a multiple amount of years and for a little amount of money, of course, compared to what some of these other guys are making.
4 years and $40 million.
4 years, $40 million, exactly. And I think the only concern here is just injuries. I mean, obviously, he started the season hurt, but when he is healthy, the guy's a flamethrower, and he looks absolutely stellar up there.
Yeah, now, as a Yankee fan, I'm a little bit concerned with Luis Severino right now. He recently had a setback due to what appeared to be little to no progression within his shoulder, which that gets me really nervous. And I've said many times on this show, when you have a starting pitcher that throws 100 miles per hour, it almost never works out without an injury. There's always injuries to be seen with starting pitchers who throw this hard, and that's one of those things that kind of gets me nervous. But Luis Severino, I think he's an incredible athlete. I think he's going to bounce back. And as you said, Andrew, when Luis Severino is healthy, I think he's one of the best pitchers in the American League. Now, remember, at the end of last year, when he started having the shoulder issues, prior to that, his ERA was in the ones, and then he finished with the 3.40 ERA. So that just goes to show how great of a pitcher he is when he's healthy. It's just that shoulder needs to stay healthy. Maybe the Yankees could move him to the bullpen for a little bit when he gets back, slowly ease him into the starting rotation, maybe have an outing where he throws 3 innings out of the pen or 4 innings, just start slow, because anytime you're going to throw him right in and he's going to throw 6 innings right out of the gate, I'm not a big fan of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Yankees are eager to get Luis Severino back, of course, with their current injury situation. I mean, I believe they have 13 players on the DL right
11,
now?
actually.
11, yeah.
It's ugly, though. But no, in the Yankees' luck, more players are going to be getting injured. And it seems like every time Gary Sanchez gets hit, he's on the ground. So he's screaming to have an injury sometime soon, and that gets me a little bit nervous.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Once again, we'll talk about the Yankees a little bit later when we discuss the Eastern divisions and see how those injuries are going to plague them throughout the year. So far, they're off to a 5-5 start, so not terrible. After a rough start, they did come back and win a series against the Orioles, so good to see. We'll have to see what comes out of the Bronx throughout this season.
Hopefully something good, but remember, the Yankees have the easiest schedule to start the season out of any Major League Baseball team, statistically speaking, based off of last year. So this is something I'm not too concerned about. Granted, you don't want to start off the season with the 11 players on the disabled or on the inactive list, but it's something not to be too concerned about because there's 162 games in the season. It's a really long season, and players will come back from this injury. And I've been telling many people, you're not going to frequently see players get injured more than once or twice in a season. So it's better to have players injured in the beginning of the season when you're playing bad teams than at the end of the season when it's crunch time.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that plays out. I thought it was especially interesting to note that Troy Tulowitzki lasted a total of 6 games. So, hey, I'll give him credit. I had him lasting for a month before he got hurt, but good for him, man. 6 games for Troy Tulowitzki, and he's back on the DL, which seems to be his home over the past 5 years.
Well, to be fair, the Yankees appear to be just fine with Tulowitzki on the DL. That's why I was so high on the DJ LeMahieu signing. I thought this was the most underrated move in all of baseball, in this past baseball offseason, because with LeMahieu, then you have so many options with that infield, and you get such a good hitter. Gleyber Torres has been great this season so far. I don't know if you've been paying attention to him, but his exit velocity is through the roof compared to last year. Gleyber Torres, I think, is going to really make a statement for himself this year. I think this is the year that people remember Gleyber Torres.
And he's going to have to be one of the guys who steps up for that team if we're seeing a lot of these injuries persist. So it'll be
I really believe he will. I mean, he's been great so far. 3 home runs. He's hit 333. His defense has really impressed me. So I've been very impressed with the performance of Gleyber Torres, especially with Troy Tulowitzki on the DL and obviously Didi Gregorius. But I think the Yankees are going to be just fine.
Just a reminder, if you want to call and discuss any baseball topics with us, that number is 202-319-5106, 202-319-5106. So moving on now to our final extension topic tonight, and that is a young starting pitcher from the St. Louis Cardinals, Miles Mikolas, who got a 4-year, $68 million deal. And if I'm being honest here, I think it's a good deal for both sides. It's not that much, but I got to say Michaelis won the deal overall. Again, he's a great pitcher, it seems like, but it seems like a really small sample size for a $68 million contract right out of the gate.
I mean, I could see where you're coming from, but the thing is, Michaelis was so good last year, 18-4 with a 2.83 ERA. That's just unheard of. I like the contract extension because you're not paying him that much. Obviously, Michaelis has been horrendous this season so far.
Yeah,
that's a major red flag to me, and he was also pretty bad in spring training. Another thing worth mentioning is he's already 30 years old. This is not a guy who is 25 or 26 like Nola or Severino. He's 30 years old, so age is quickly getting up there, and I'm really high on Michaelis because I think that he has so much potential, especially after what he did last year. Finishing 6th in the Cy Young race and becoming an all-star. I think that was great. It's just that he needs to keep that up, and I do agree with you. I don't like giving big contract extensions, especially after one great year, because anything can happen within 1 year. You could make one little change, and you could become good, but this is a contract that I thought it was fair for both sides. I like this deal for both sides.
Yeah, like you said, age 30, it's easy to forget that he actually started off with the Padres back in 2012 and also had a stint with the Rangers in 2014. I think a lot of people don't remember that. He was nothing great with them. He was a solid pitcher for the Padres, and he wasn't that great for the Rangers, and then missing, it looks like, 3 years there due to injuries.
Yes, sir. 3 years due to injuries, and I think he bounced around in the minors a little bit. Something worth mentioning, though, Michaelis has never been a strikeout pitcher, which doesn't always translate well in Busch Stadium because a lot of home runs are hit there, but I don't know. It still seems like a fairly decent contract.
See, that was my biggest concern, and as we're seeing now on the stats, St. Louis Cardinals Stadium, as you said, a very hitter-friendly ballpark, and he also led the league in hits allowed last year with 186. I think that's very concerning, and I think that 2.83 ERA from him, I don't think that's something he's going to be able to replicate if he doesn't get those hits down. And I know he's never been a strikeout pitcher, but there's a lot of guys who aren't strikeout pitchers who were still able to make solid careers. I mean, guys like Roy Halladay at the end of his career really relied on his ground ball. Guys like I'm trying to think of other really sinker ballers. Cliff Lee, yeah, well, he wasn't at first, but once he came to Philly, he kind of like reinvented himself.
Yeah, no,
like
for sure.
One season, he struck out at like almost 250, I think, one season.
Kyle Loesch.
Kyle Loesch, yeah, there's another good one. Very good, very good.
And he spent time with the Cardinals as well.
He did. Kyle Loesch has bounced around a lot of places. That's right. He was with Cardinals, Brewers for a little bit, a lot of different teams there.
Rangers too.
Rangers,
right?
yeah.
So he's a guy that's been from place to place.
Yeah, absolutely there. So that'll about wrap up that extension there for the talk of the extensions for the different players we've had. And I think I mentioned this 2 weeks ago, but just a really interesting note here. In the 17 to 18 offseason last year, remember, there was only 6 players who agreed to a 4+ year extension. And this year, from 18 to 19 offseason, there had been 20. And I just think that's absolutely amazing to see the direction that teams are taking. I don't know if it's a response to how this free agent class was treated. I mean, look, it's April 9th. We've played 2 weeks of baseball, and we still have a lot of top free agents who literally are not on a team right
Dallas
now.
Keuchel, Craig Kimbrell, guys that stand out right away. I'm still appalled that nobody's given Keuchel a chance. You've heard all these rumors about the San Diego Padres possibly being interested. When is somebody going to sign Dallas Keuchel? Somebody give him a chance. A 1-year deal, come on. But then again, some executives do believe that his asking price hasn't lowered. And if you're Dallas Keuchel and that's true, lower your asking price. Come on.
I think it's the asking price issue. I think there's a lot of teams that would say, hey, we'll take you on a 1-year deal without a doubt. But I think he is just so adamant in saying, no, I want the 2-year, 3-year deal. And I think a lot of teams are looking at him. They're seeing that he led the league in hits allowed last year. They're seeing that his ERA has been climbing, and he's been striking out less and less batters. And I think that concerns a lot of teams out there.
Yeah, no, that you do mention some very good points there. It appeared last year that he was clearly on the decline. He didn't appear to be as good as he was in prior years. Also, something worth noting now is if you're going to sign Dallas Keuchel, you might not get him until
you're probably not
going to
get him until mid-May.
Yeah, mid-May because he's going to have to spend some time in the minors because he wasn't pitching in spring training. So that's another thing that you have to keep track of. And something worth noting about why Craig Kimbrell hasn't signed, because many of you guys keep asking, why hasn't Craig Kimbrell signed? Why hasn't he signed? If a team signs Craig Kimbrell, they need to sacrifice a first-round pick to the Red Sox.
Correct.
Most teams don't want to do that for a closer, especially one who's asking for more money than he's most likely worth. So if you put all the pieces to the puzzle together, it appears that Craig Kimbrell might wait until mid-July to sign, simply because teams don't want to give up that first-round pick. That's just my opinion on this. I don't know about what you think, Andrew, but that's just how
No,
I
I think that could be a very, very valid reason of why he's not signing. But if I'm being honest, I think it's the same thing with money. I think that after his agent came out and said, this is the best closer in baseball history, he deserves 5-6 years, $100 million. I think after he said that, a lot of teams just started laughing and said, yeah, okay, see you later. I mean, look, same as Dallas Keuchel, I think there's at least probably 5 to 10 teams in baseball right now who would love Craig Kimbrell in the back of their bullpen, but his asking price must not be lowering because, I mean, I don't think I blame those teams. I would not give Craig Kimbrell $100 million or anything more than 2 to 3 years. I think 3 years is even pushing it, but
especially for a guy who appears to be on the decline. I don't know if many of you guys paid attention to the Red Sox in the postseason, but he was just not the same. Could not throw strikes, and when he was throwing strikes, he was getting batted around. His home run per 9 inning was through the roof last year. Also, something worth mentioning is his K per 9 was also way down. Only 14 last year compared to almost 17 the year before that.
Okay,
so
but 14 K per 9 is still absolutely ridiculous.
It's very ridiculous. But my point is, he's on the decline.
Right.
You can see the numbers are slowly starting to go down. I don't think velocity was much of an issue last year. There was a report saying that he was throwing in Vegas a few weeks ago, and his fastball was touching 94, 95. I don't know how true that is, but if that's true, that's something you got to be wary of.
Yeah, because in that case, you got to think that he's going to be relying a lot more on his off-speed stuff, which is that hard knuckle change, and then, of course, the occasional changeup. But then they're not really strong pitches. His go-to pitch his entire career has been that 4-seamer and that 2-seamer. And
can he throw the knuckle curve for strikes?
That's the problem. I don't think he can. That knuckle curve's always been a pitch that he throws when, the batter's waiting or sitting on a fastball and you catch him off guard and they, swing at one in the dirt. But throwing that for strikes seems dangerous. I think that's also how he allowed a lot of his home runs last year.
Not only that, last year the amount of walks he gave up was actually higher than most previous other years. So this is something that's showing that he's not throwing strikes as frequently. And also something worth mentioning is he walked almost as many batters as Dellin Betances did last season. So many of you guys who are bashing Betances for not being able to throw strikes, you got to pay attention to Craig Kimbrell here. He's not throwing strikes either.
Yeah, seriously, and that's something when you know that Dellin Betances allowed. It was more walks, was it?
Betances had a few more
walks, yeah. And that's saying something. Betances is one of the wildest guys I think in baseball right now. And paired with Gary Sanchez behind the plate, it leaves for some excellent scenarios over in the Bronx, don't they?
I miss seeing Betances pitch. He's so much fun to watch, and seeing him hurt just hurts me, especially in his free agent season.
Yeah, I'll have to see. Dellin Betances, another interesting piece, I think can be one of the most effective relievers in baseball and one of the worst relievers in baseball at the same time. You never know what you're going to get with him, it seems like.
Oh, yeah. He's that knuckle curve, the slurve, everything, the cutter. It's an incredible guy. And, 6'8", 250 pounds. He's a great guy.
Yeah, so that'll, like I said, wrap up that extension talk there. It'll be interesting to see next offseason if this extension trend continues or if more players seem to start testing the free agent market again, although I have a hard time believing that. So moving on then, we are going to discuss our outlooks on all the teams in baseball over the next 3 weeks on their start. Now, of course, some of the starts are going to be later than others because we're going to do this over 3 weeks. But we'll be able to go back and mention some other things about the teams if something significant happens. And we figured why not start in the East this week, as of course many of our listeners are fans of teams in the East. So we are going to tackle the NL and AL East. We're going to talk about their records so far, who their impact players have been so far to start the season, and whether or not that's been surprising. And then their outlook for the rest of the season, whether we think that's going to be a surprising season. Maybe they continue some success, or maybe if some of a cold start is going to carry over for the rest of the season.
Yep, and we'll have to see how most of these teams end up playing out, but it should be interesting.
Yeah, and just a reminder, anytime you want to call in and discuss anything about what we're talking about here, 202-319-5106 is that number. You can also find that number on our Twitter at @PastimeCap if you want to call us during the broadcast and don't hear us mention it. So with that said, let's jump right into the American League East, and we will start with the 500 Baltimore Orioles, currently 5-5 to start the season. After they started the season 4-1, I believe.
They did. Was it 4-1? No, it wasn't 4-1 because they lost 2 games to the Yankees, didn't they?
It might have been 3-1. I know that they won like 3 of their first 4 or something like that. I remember they won 2 against the Yankees, and then they took another one from the Blue Jays.
Yeah, it was 4-1 actually. You were right.
It was 4-1. Okay, yeah. So they took 2 from the Blue Jays. Yeah, that's what it was. And last night, I'm pretty sure they put up, what was it, 12 runs against them?
12-4. They beat the Oakland Athletics. By the way, the Oakland Athletics, they haven't been that great either. Below 500.
Yeah. When we get back to the AL East, that's going to be a conversation I'd love to have because a lot of expectations for the A's after making the playoffs last year, and still a very talented roster, but not off to a great start. But anyway, back to those Orioles. For their impact players so far, I'm going to have to go with their newest shortstop, Jonathan VR. Oh, I'm sorry. I think he is actually playing second base right now.
No, he's been playing shortstop.
Playing shortstop?
Yeah.
Okay. So playing shortstop. And look, I mean, even without considering that he's been probably the best player so far, I think he's probably the best player on the team, if I'm being honest.
VR?
Yeah, I don't.
Oh yeah, no question.
I don't really think anyone else on that team is on his level. But he started off really great. He's batting above 300. He's hit, I think, 2 or 3 home runs so far, which he's always had a little bit of pop, but it's good to see. Yeah, 3 home runs so far, 341 average. So good to see out of him. He's definitely been their impact player so far, batting at the top of that lineup. And, of course, the speed, very valuable to have. It's a guy who's going to steal 30 to 50 bases a year, and we've seen him do that with the Milwaukee Brewers over the past couple of years.
And he's one of those guys that a manager simply loves because VR's a guy that you can fit at the top of your lineup or it can be your number 3 hitter. He's a guy that has shown this year that he hits the ball hard. His average exit velocity is through the roof. And he's hitting 341. I mean, numbers simply don't lie there. The 3 home runs are really nice. He's already got 2 stolen bases. So he's a great guy to build around considering he's only 27. And the Brewers clearly lost his trade when they traded him away to the Orioles for Jonathan Scope, who is not even on the team anymore.
Yeah, that
was such a great trade for the Baltimore Orioles. Now, that's a franchise I have to give props to, especially when it comes to trades because, well, not recently, but in the past they have made some very good trades. The Chris Davis trade was great at the time. The Koji Uhara one was great. Obviously, the Adam Jones trade was great. So this is a team that clearly knows what they're doing when it comes to making trades. So I got to respect this team.
Now, you mentioned Chris Davis there. And I just think that here at the broadcast of National Pastime in the nation's capital, we should take a moment of silence for Chris Davis, who last night set a new Major League record for being 0 for his last 47. He has not gotten a hit in his last 47 at-bats, and that is dating back to September of last season. The man just looks absolutely miserable up there at the plate, and I got to be honest, it's a shame to see. You got to feel for the guy at some point.
Is he really miserable, though, when he's making $22 million a season?
Look, and here's the thing. It's funny that you mentioned that, and I think a lot of people also think that. Ben Davis, the color commentator for the Philadelphia Phillies, made this point last night, that a lot of people say, oh, he's getting paid $20-something million a year. How sad can he be? But I think you got to remember, I think a lot of the times in baseball, we think of these guys as robots. We expect them to go out there and produce like machines almost. And you got to remember in this that Chris Davis is a human being. Like this has got to be humiliating for him. I mean,
and imagine like every time you strike out, you're getting booed when you go back to the mound, and after every single game, the media is asking you, "What's going on? Are you going to get a hit?" I do agree though. This is one of those things. It's like, does money actually talk? You're getting paid so much money, but he appears to be miserable, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think it's, I'm sure there's been cases over time where someone signs a fat contract and at the end of the time they're like, well, it doesn't really matter. Team's not going anywhere. I just don't care. I don't think that's the case with Chris Davis. I think he genuinely wants to be good. He's so lost up there at the plate now. From what I've heard, a lot of the Orioles coaches and people on the team and in the clubhouse are trying to get him to change his approach, and he will not change it. He is adamant by his old ways. They said they've worked in the past. They're going to work again. He's just got to get out of the slump. I don't really know if that's the case. Something is not working here. When you go 47 straight at-bats without getting a hit, something's not right.
That's terrible. And not only that, the strikeouts are through the roof. He struck out 54% of his at-bats this season. And it's just one of those things where I think you're right. He's simply got to watch some film and just change his approach because it looks like when he's going up there, he doesn't have a purpose. Anytime you're going up to bat, you need to have a purpose. That's why I like DJ LeMahieu so much because it seems like he always has a purpose. Where should I try to hit the ball? Do I need to hit a fly ball or should I go for a base hit? Stuff like this. Chris Davis, when he's up at the plate, it appears that he doesn't have that right now. It appears that he's simply just trying to hit the ball, and I think the fans and the media has just simply gotten to his head.
Oh, it has to be mental at this point.
Anytime you have gone on such a long streak like this and people keep on reminding you of it, it's hard to get out of your head. And the Orioles clearly believe in Chris Davis. That's why they've been starting him every single day. If they didn't believe in him, they would simply bench him because they could simply put Trey Mancini at first base. He's more than capable of doing that.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's so sad. I mean, I remember when I was, 12, 13 years old, and Chris Davis was like the most feared guy on the planet. The year he hit 53 home runs, drove in 138. I loved watching Chris Davis. I remember that summer before the All-Star break where he hit something like 32 home runs before the All-Star game. Like, that was insane. And, I've always loved sluggers over the history of baseball. And watching Chris Davis as a kid, it was just awesome. I loved him. I always drafted him as a fantasy player. And it's really sad to see such a brutal decline coming out of a player like him.
No, and not only that, it also happened right after he got a contract extension. So
of course, yeah.
People tend to think, okay, once he got this contract extension, he decided he was just going to sit back and do nothing. But I don't think that was the case with Chris Davis. I still think he's a hard worker. I simply think that everything's gotten to his head. There's been a lot of additional pressure put on him once he got this contract extension because people expected him to lead such a young team like the Baltimore Orioles.
Yep, so keep Chris Davis in your thoughts there. Hopefully he finds a way to get a hit tonight and does not start the season off 0 for 49 dating back to last year. Moving on to the next team, another 500 team, the 5-5 New York Yankees. Now, after a pretty abysmal start to the season, losing a series against the Orioles, they've picked it up. The offense has definitely picked it up. We've seen Gary Sanchez with that massive performance the other day, a 3-homer game. He's up to 5 on the season now. But
Aaron
the main
Judge is starting to look comfortable again.
Aaron Judge, of course, yes, looking to be warming up once again. 3 homers already this season. But the main impact player for the Yankees that I gotta say has been so far, in my opinion, DJ LeMahieu. Looking like a great signing. Sure. He's batting over 400. He's driven in a lot of runs, and he's been a guy I think that is very valuable for them with a lot of injuries. He can play all over the infield, and he's been doing just that and also hitting while doing that.
I think you've heard me rave about DJ LeMahieu enough. He's probably my favorite hitter on the Yankees right now. He's a guy that's going to do the little things that most people don't pay attention to in the scorebook. And I've been telling people, I don't care about the home run ball right now. I don't care. I don't care if DJ LeMahieu hits 30. I don't care if he hits 10. As long as he's hitting line drives, as long as he's hitting the ball to the right side of the field when he needs to, putting the ball in play, that's all I'm asking for. And LeMahieu's done such a great job of that. He has been the best hitter in this Yankees lineup. Him, Gleyber Torres, Aaron Judge. They've been great for this team. And another guy who's really stepped up recently, Clint Frazier. Clint Frazier has done a great job. And as many of you know, I was not high on Clint Frazier prior to the season. I didn't think that there was much there because he simply just seemed like another guy who could just hit home runs. But Clint Frazier's he's looked great so far this season, hitting .429. He's already got 3 home runs and 9 RBIs in 6 games. That's insane.
And he's just got called up after an injury, right? He didn't start the season on the roster.
And I was talking to somebody. When when Giancarlo Stanton comes back, who starts in the outfield? Is it Brett Gardner, the lefty, or the righty, Clint Frazier? Who is it?
I think it depends a lot on how Clint Frazier is doing when he comes back, but I might give the edge to Frazier just because, look, he's a young guy. Let him get out there and play. I mean, look, Brett Gardner, obviously, nothing against him. He's been a great player of his career, but the man's getting old, and he's not going to be anything for their future.
And he's starting to slow down, right?
Yeah, let Clint Frazier go out there swing the bat.
I love this idea. And the reason why many people would start Gardner over Clint Frazier is because his team does not have many lefty bats. Got Greg Bird, Brett Gardner, and that's about it. And then you got a few switch hitters.
See, that is a concern for me, though. I think that's a problem.
That is a problem, and that's why the Yankees are so adamant about starting Brett Gardner over Clint Frazier. But I'm not that high on believing in whether or not you should do, balance out lefty-righty. Because if a righty can hit a pitcher, just start them. I don't care about how a player does against – I don't care about balance. I just want to see how the player does against a pitcher. If the player can hit the pitcher, put him in. If it's all righties and they can all hit, go for it. If you need to balance it out, that's different. I don't know.
All I'm saying is I think a certain left-handed bat would have fit perfectly in the middle of that Yankees lineup this offseason.
I mean, Why are you so Bryce Harper guy?
Hey, look, I did not want to see Bryce Harper go to the Yankees at all, but
And,
I
okay,
cannot
the Yankees
deny
had no business pursuing Bryce Harper.
No. I get that, but you got to admit, him in the middle of that lineup, you're the World Series favorites without a doubt, and I still think that they are probably the World Series favorites, but him in the middle of that lineup would have been perfect. And I know we've harped on this before, and I don't want to make a big deal out of this because we have other teams to discuss, but I'm just saying, George Steinbrenner would have locked up Bryce Harper in a second.
George Steinbrenner
Yes.
is resting in peace right now.
He would have if he was still alive. Bryce Harper would have been a Yankee by December.
And we still don't need him.
No, well, hey, I don't know. Howell is yet to bring a championship to New York, so we'll have to see how that plays
Oh, we're going
out.
to be fine. Once Bryce Harper is 36 and broken down, the Philly fans are going to be booing him, just like the Orioles fans are with Chris Davis.
Okay.
Mark my words.
Okay. Well, then when Bryce Harper's 36, we will have to see how that plays out.
And you'll still be paying him $27 million a year.
Better than Stanton's $32 million, though, I would say.
Stanton is okay, but the thing with Stanton fits better with the Yankees than Bryce Harper would have, simply because you got you got two of the biggest guys in baseball in the same lineup.
Yeah, who are
back.
both righties and who both only hit home runs and do nothing else. And
Aaron
strike
Judge-
out. Okay, they strike out. That's
Aaron
true.
Judge does more than just hit
All
home
right,
runs.
fine. Aaron Judge is a more rounded player, but Giancarlo Stanton's strictly a home run hitter at
Okay,
this point.
but when Stanton can go out and hit 59 home runs in Marlins Park, you take a chance on that in Yankee Stadium.
No, and don't get me wrong, Stan's one of my favorite players, but hey, I've yet to see him do that in the Bronx yet. So
38 home runs last year, the second most of his career. You wouldn't take that?
well, home runs seem to be somewhat of a premium in today's baseball world, so I don't know if $32 million a year for a guy who does that is as valuable. But hey, we'll see. All props to him. I love Giancarlo Stanton. I loved him when he was with the Marlins, so we'll see if he can turn that around. Moving on to a team now that I think a lot of people are waiting to hear discussed, and after another loss today to a team that was not exactly great in the Blue Jays, I think it's hard to not be concerned if you are a fan of this team, and that is the Boston Red Sox, who are off to an absolutely abysmal 3-9 start to start the season. And
I'm loving this,
I
man.
think we have someone who's pretty happy about that here.
Oh, I'm so happy about that.
But seriously, though, the Red Sox, what is going on with them? And I understand they had a very tough trip to start the year. They started in the West Coast. They played three West Coast teams, all on the West Coast and all away from home. They just got home today to play their first home game. But still, this is a talented team. I did not expect this much struggle to start 2019.
Can anybody expect the Red Sox to be this bad after they just won a World Series? Because I don't think anybody expects them to be 3-9. But the problem with this team, it's not their bullpen. It's their starting pitching. The Red Sox have one of the worst starting pitching staffs in all of baseball. It's atrocious how bad this team is. Every single game, it appears that the Red Sox are giving up 11 or 12 runs. It's insane. I've never seen anything that bad. This team just needs starting pitching. That's their main issue right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was talking, like I said, that I'd have an impact player for each team on who's been good so far for them. Well, for the Red Sox, I don't have an impact player. I have a player who has been so bad for them it's hard to ignore, and that is the man that they just locked up to a giant extension, Chris Sale, starting pitcher and supposed to be their ace. He's been terrible this year. 0-3 to start the season, a 9 ERA. He's only struck out 8 people in 13 innings pitched. And keep in mind, that's 13 innings pitched over 3 starts for him. That is not like Chris Sale at all. And the other big thing that Robbie was actually bringing up earlier today before the broadcast, that velocity is down, and that is concerning.
Oh, and that's my biggest concern. I'm not a Red Sox fan, so I'm not concerned. But if you are a Red Sox fan, you should be concerned because Chris Sale last year was able to touch 97, 98, or even 100 sometimes. And when his velocity started dipping at the end of the season, Red Sox fans were saying Chris Sale was hurt at the end, or he's always bad at the end of the year. I'm not worried about his velocity. Fair enough, and he looked good in the World Series. I respect that. But he had all offseason to recover, had 2 months to sit back and let his arm get better. And his velocity's still not there. 92 miles per hour this season. That's a major concern. And that slider velocity. Last year he was able to throw that 84 miles an hour. This year, 78. That's not good.
That's
the
very
strikeout
concerning,
numbers.
yeah.
Chris Sale is a guy who struck out 237 batters in 158 innings last year, 308 in 214 innings the past year, and this year you're not even getting a strikeout per inning? That's
Again,
not good.
still early, but it's definitely concerning to say the least because Chris Sale is a guy who's made his money over his career on the strikeout. He's, remember, struck out 300 batters 2 seasons ago. Of course, still somehow lost the Cy Young voting. I'm not sure how that happened. I was a big Chris Sale fan that year for him winning the Cy Young. But he didn't. And, yeah, he's a big strikeout guy, and I think it's concerning that he's not doing that as much and allowing a whole lot more runs than he normally has. So.
And earlier this year, I said that Chris Sale's velocity was going to be an issue, and many people were saying Chris Sale's going to be fine because, he throws so funky and it's tough to pick up. Clearly not so far. I mean, anytime you can't pitch against the Blue Jays or the Mariners, I mean, the Mariners are very good right now, but the Oakland Athletics, who have not been that great this season, that's just not good. And the Red Sox gave him an extra off day so he could rest that arm, and he still couldn't do anything. I mean, 3 innings, 6 hits, 7 runs in his first start. Today, 4 innings, 7 hits, and 5 runs. The velocity's not there. Nothing's there. And I would be concerned if I were a Red Sox fan. I know it's still early in the season, but he's just going to keep throwing more pitches as the season goes on. So it's not like his arm's going to have time to rest.
Yeah, Chris Sale going to be an interesting case coming out of Boston for the rest of the season, especially after getting that big extension and avoiding entering the free agent market this year. So we will have to see how that works out for the Red Sox. I feel like they're still a very talented team. I think it's going to be hard for them to stay this bad for this long.
I would
but
agree.
It's definitely a hard start to see for them.
And I was saying before we go to the next team that this team is simply too talented. This team is too talented to be 3-9 right now. I mean, this lineup is sensational 1 through 9. I think that all these guys can hit. Mookie Betts, MVP candidate every year. JD Martinez is always going to look good. Rafael Devers, I'm high on him. I think he's going to step up. Mitch Moreland's been great so far. So if you are a Red Sox fan, you should know that things will get better for your team. It looks like things are going to get better. I don't anticipate them having a .333 winning percentage at the end of the year.
No.
So things should turn around for them sooner or later, however.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I would think so at least. Just a reminder, 202-319-5106 if you want to call in and discuss anything about the divisions that we're talking about here or anything else baseball related. Taking a caller? Oh, we have a caller.
Yes.
So just a second. All right, caller, you're on the air. Who are we speaking to?
Really, this is Will Corrigan.
Will, how you doing, man?
Good. Good to talk to you guys.
It's good to talk to you.
I just wanted to call in really quickly and say a little bit about Chris Sale.
Oh, sure. What you got about Chris Sale?
I think that some of the concerns regarding him are a little bit overblown.
Really? And why is that?
Well, you see, he had very, very few spring training innings. It was essentially like after the World Series, he got put on ice right for the season. He had less than 9 innings over spring training.
Okay.
So I would argue that some of his starts are being treated closer to rehab starts and everything else.
So you're not concerned about the velocity that's 8 miles an hour lower than it was last season, or the spin rate on the slider being worse than it was last year?
Not yet. I think, well, to be honest, if he puts too much strain on his arm by going up that spin rate and that velocity right away, he's going to really suffer down the stretch. If he's taking his time to loosen up his arm and he's able to still get outs like he was against Oakland, or Arizona, excuse me, then I think he can still be an effective pitcher and he'll be able to get more into his powerful stuff as we get down the stretch.
Now, what do you think about the other numbers against Chris Sale? The hits have gone through the roof against him. The amount of runs, I mean, the ERA is 9.00, and hitters just look a lot more comfortable against him this year than they did in prior years. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that's mostly a side effect of what we've been seeing before, that spin rate and his velocity are down right now. His arm really isn't ready to go yet.
See, I would agree with that because we're seeing a similar case with David Robertson on the Phillies right now where they gave him, I think, 2 spring training outings total, and he's looked abysmal to start the season. So I think a lot of these veterans are getting less and less time to get ready in spring training because the teams think they don't need as much, and this might be a side effect.
All right, now, as a Red Sox fan, I'm assuming you are,
Yes.
When would you start to be concerned about Chris Sale?
I would probably give him the next 2.5 weeks. Another start, maybe 2, 3 at the most. But by the time we get into May, at the very latest, you really, really have to pitch because he's your ace. You just sign him to a big deal, and if he can't produce, you have to be concerned.
Now, what do you think about the 0-3 record, though, this season? He only lost 4 games last season, and his first 3 starts this season, he's already got 3 losses.
Well, I think we all learned from Jacob deGrom last year that wins and losses for a pitcher are terribly overblown.
I would agree.
I don't put too
that
much credence on that. He looked really good on the West Coast after he started against the Mariners. 1 earned run, went 6 innings. The team just couldn't produce on offense.
Yeah, I think it's.
So
it's
I think
also
he
gotta
has
remember
every
that,
capacity to be a good pitcher this year.
Yeah, you definitely got to remember. I mean, a lot of the win-loss is not a lot of it. All of it is based on whether your team scores or not. And like you said, they did not score for him in Arizona the other night. So I don't think the record's a big concern.
But when you have an ERA of 9.00, is the hitting really the problem?
Again, though, it is April, so.
Yeah, we're
can make
dealing
that
with such
case
a
a
small
lot.
sample size that I don't think the ERA is relevant yet.
Yeah, honestly, I think he's too talented of a pitcher to stay this bad for this long. And I think it's just a combination of him getting into a slump at the same time as everyone else on the team that's really caused them to start the season off so bad.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. I'll listen off air.
Yeah, thanks for calling in, Will. Have a great night.
Yep, you too.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how that plays out in Boston because, like Will said, you just signed a guy to a big extension. He's their ace, and he's a guy that you need to rely on every 5th day to have a good chance to win a ball game.
I would agree with that, and I do think that Chris Sale's going to step up later on. I don't know if we're going to see the velocity come in later on, but I do think that he should be fine down the road. It's not something that I would be concerned about, but I wouldn't blow it through the water, you know?
Absolutely. So 2 more teams here in the AL East. Let's get the first one out of the way, which is the Toronto Blue Jays. And I don't want to talk too much about the Toronto Blue Jays because I just have to say a few things. Firstly, you shouldn't be watching this team until Vladimir Guerrero Jr. comes up because there's no reason to watch this team at all. There's nothing exciting happening. It's the Toronto Blue Jays. There's not a star left.
Lourdes Gurriel Jr. did steal home today. I mean, that's when a
Wow,
guy can run like that, that's
okay.
pretty fun to watch.
He stole home. It's good for them, and they're a 3-8 record. Which
4-8.
I'm
Actually.
sorry, 4-8 because they did defeat the Boston Red Sox today. But no, like I said, there's not a single reason to watch these Blue Jays. Not really gonna harp on it anymore. Once Vlad comes up, once Bichette comes up, then this should be pretty interesting to see. Couple notes though about some players who have been off to a great start. Matt Shoemaker looking very comfortable in Toronto after a couple years with the Los Angeles Angels. As of this morning, and this doesn't take into account his start today, he was at 0 earned runs allowed, 14 innings pitched, 15 strikeouts in those innings. He also had another great outing today. I think it was either 5 2
2/3 runs, I think, yeah.
Yeah, 2 runs, 6 strikeouts or so. He's been off to a great start for them, so that's a solid pickup after spending some time in L.A., and another guy, Freddie Galvis, leading the team in home runs right now. And, hey, good for him. Freddie Galvis, I think a lot of people forget, does have a 20 home run season back in 2016 with the Philadelphia Phillies. Granted, he did bat like .219 that year, but hey, good to see Freddie getting some success over there across the border in Canada.
Now, how about your boy Ken Giles? He's been looking pretty good.
I don't know if I'd call Ken Giles my boy.
I mean,
but,
5 2/3, 9 strikeouts, 0 runs. Come
yeah,
on, you can't
I
turn that
mean,
down.
hey, there was no doubt that Ken Giles was a talented guy when he was with Philly. It's just a matter of he was a bit of a head case.
You know, he's a guy I think could bounce back and have a good year. He developed a new slider that he used frequently, and he's proven to me so far that he can step up and be the closer of the future for the Toronto Blue Jays. After all, he is only 28 years old, so I don't know. Ken Giles is a guy I think could have a bounce-back season.
Sure, why not? I'd love to see Kenny succeed. I mean, like I said, he was a bit of a head case, both with the Phillies and with the Astros, of course, last year, telling his manager to F off. So that was great teamwork there, great respecting your
If he's not
leadership.
blowing saves, he won't have to do that this season.
That's true, I guess. So maybe he won't have to curse at his manager if he's not blowing saves. So, yeah, that's the Blue Jays there. Don't watch any of their baseball until Vladimir Guerrero Jr. comes up. And that leaves us with one team, and the team that is in first place right now with an 8-3 record, that is the Tampa Bay Rays, off to a blistering start. And it's been fun to watch. Tampa Bay, a team that won 90-plus games last year, came in third in the division. Of course, probably would have won the division if they were in a different division, maybe the AL Central or NL East. But it's been fun to see them in Tampa. I mean, they don't exactly have any fans showing up to games. They play in a warehouse, but hey, they've been doing some great baseball down there in Florida. big impact guy for them who's off to a good start, and also a guy that I think is going to be absolutely amazing, Yandy Diaz. I think that
agree.
pickup was absolutely amazing from the Cleveland Indians. If you don't remember, that was part of that three-way trade where Edwin Encarnacion went to Seattle, Carlos Santana went to Cleveland, and then Yandy Diaz went to Tampa Bay. And like I said, he's already off to a great start. 3 home runs so far, batting .286. This is a guy that was never a top prospect. He was never someone that people thought was going to be anything more than maybe a guy with a little pop. But I think that new environment, new role in the lineup as the DH and possibly third or first base, seeing some time there, I think he's going to be a key piece in that Tampa Bay lineup.
And he looks just a lot more confident. He looks very confident up at the plate this year. So I'm high on Yandy Diaz as well. He is a guy who I think is going to do big things in the future. And this Rays team has just impressed me throughout. I don't know how I feel about them only using 3 starting pitchers, but I like where this team is. I like the direction that this team is headed. Another guy that really stands out to me is Austin Meadows. Austin Meadows has been great this year, hitting .308 with 3 home runs already, and he does a great job of getting on base. Meadows is a guy that they acquired for Chris Archer, and he is somebody that they could look to build around in their outfield for the future. Maybe replace Kevin Kiermaier once he walks.
Yeah, let's not forget Austin Meadows, part of that absolute steal of a trade when they shipped off Chris Archer to Pittsburgh for not only Meadows, but also Tyler Glasnow. And just going back to that trade, I remember when I saw that trade that went through right at the deadline, I was just thinking, what in the heck was this? Like, they just gave up 2 of their top arms for an aging Chris Archer who, yes, we know is on a team-friendly deal, but he's nowhere near the Chris Archer that he was, and he will never get back to that point. I mean, hey, he's spending his time in Pittsburgh throwing at Derek Dietrichs because he's mad that he admired a home run.
I don't get why people were so high on Chris Archer when he was a member of the Tampa Bay Rays. People were saying that that teams would have to give up most of their farm system to get Chris Archer. Chris Archer? The guy that had an ERA above 4 the past 3 seasons? Are you joking me?
Well, everyone looks at Chris Archer and remembers that. I think it was that 2015 season where he was amazing. I mean, they just think that
2015?
What?
Is this 2015?
No, it's not. And no, I'm in agreement with you here. I don't think he's good anymore either. But so many teams see that one year and say, "Oh, he's still young. He's on a team-friendly deal. Oh, he can totally pick it up. He can be the pitcher he used to be." And they've been saying that for 3 years. I remember the Rays they were trying to trade Chris Archer for the past 3 years at the deadline, and finally it happened this year. But, I mean, like we said, that 2015 season, he was very good, and I think a lot of teams think he can get back to that form. But now that he's getting up there in age, I just don't think he can.
Yeah, and he is somebody that Chris Archer did have value simply because his strikeout numbers were through the roof. But when it came to ERA and hits, he wasn't that impressive to me. I don't know.
No, yeah, and again, I think it was an absolute steal of a trade.
And also, you mentioned Tyler Glasnow. He's been great this season.
He has.
I mean, 2-0 with a 0.82 ERA in 2 starts. I mean, this team, they're looking really good. Charlie Morton's been pretty good for them. Blake Snell is Blake Snell. I think that he's going to continue to be Blake Snell. He's a great guy. So this team has great pitching, and their lineup is pretty deep. So this could be one of the more underrated teams in the American League.
And let's not forget, of course, they're doing that 3-man rotation with 2 openers. So every 4th and 5th day, we see different guy out of the pen opening those games. It worked last year, and hey, they're already off to an 8-3 start. Maybe it'll work again.
Yeah, but it's looking pretty good. Their bullpen is it's loaded. It's one of the most underrated bullpens in all of baseball. I mean, Chaz Rowe, Jose Alvarado, they've been great this
Jose
season.
Alvarado, I think one of the most underappreciated relievers in baseball. I'm sure you saw the other day the videos of what he was doing with his fastball.
Yeah.
98 with movement to a lefty.
Just unfair.
Forget about it. You're just not going to hit that. I mean, he's just absolutely outstanding. Diego Castillo, here we see here, another great guy in that bullpen. I feel like they have a lot of guys who are very exceptional in their bullpen, but a lot of people just don't know who they are because they play in Tampa Bay. I mean,
that is true. Anytime. It is kind of difficult to play in a place like Tampa Bay and be well known.
I think Tommy Pham made that pretty well known when he moved
called out all the fans.
Yeah, Tommy Pham saying over the offseason he didn't enjoy playing in front of a fan base that didn't even show up to any of the games, which, to be fair, is not incorrect. They had one of the lowest attendances in baseball last year.
Might have actually had the lowest.
No, they didn't have the lowest. It was the Marlins.
Oh, poor Marlins.
But yeah, not exactly incorrect. I mean, it baffles me. Okay, in a way it baffles me, but in a way it doesn't. I mean, it baffles me because they were a 92-win team last year, and they were a very exciting team, too. A lot of young players. Blake Snell winning the Cy Young Award. Tommy Pham, a mid-season acquisition that did very well for them. But at the same time, Tampa Bay is just not a good market for sports. Everyone who lives there moved there. No one's actually growing up a Tampa Bay Rays fan. You know, they don't have those deep, devoted fan bases. And also, as I said earlier, that stadium is it's a warehouse. It's like you're playing baseball in a dark, damp warehouse, and it's not fun for anyone. It's not fun as an experience as a fan. I'm sure it's not fun as an experience as a player for the people who got to play there. I mean,
Oh, no.
hitting the roof with these, possible home runs, and then the rule with the doubles, and
It's just a mess.
It is. And, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Tampa Bay. There's always those talks over the offseason. First of a new stadium, which actually got shot down by the city of Tampa Bay, which was a shame because it looked really nice. It was going to focus on the aspect that they didn't draw as many people. It was only going to seat around 32 to 33,000. And I think that would have fit them. It would have been cool for the Tampa Bay Rays to have a stadium like that. City shot it down, though, so we're not going to see that. Then there's all the talks about them possibly relocating to another city, whether it be Montreal, whether it be someplace in Mexico City, although I highly doubt it's going to be a place in Mexico City because you're going to need a bodyguard everywhere you go in that city. So
Appears to be that way, but...
But yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. I find it hard to believe that they're going to move the team if they continue to do well. And hey, they're doing great to start the season. Like we said, 8-3.
Well, some people are campaigning for them to move back to Montreal. Well, not back to, but to Montreal in general. So you never know.
So we will have to see what that happens there. That about finishes up the AL East there. It looks like we're approaching 7 p.m. here, so it looks like we'll save the NL East for next week. We'll be able to tackle the NL East, talking about our impressions on them. Of course, that'll give us a little more of a sample size with a week more of baseball. And then we'll move on to the AL and NL Central, where I think there's some interesting conversations to be had, especially with the NL Central, where it seems like honestly, 3 of the 5 teams, maybe 4 of the 5 teams could easily make a playoff run. We got some very talented teams over there.
Very exciting, and we'll have to see how things play out within this next week.
Absolutely. So, once again, this has been Nation's Pastime in the nation's capital. Once again, we're live every Tuesday from 6 to 7 on WCUA Radio. Make sure to check our Twitter at NatPastimeCap after the show for the show to be uploaded in case you missed it. Go ahead and share that with other people. And thank you for listening. Have a great night.
Peace out.